All right, welcome. We still have some folks joining, but we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to our inaugural Women's Retirement Security Day presentation. My name is Tricia Grayson, and I am the Marketing Director at Hurd McElroy and Vestal, or as we call it, HMV for short. We are a professional accounting services firm, and we have served the Arklatex for actually this year is our 80th year. In addition to traditional tax, audit, and accounting services, HMV also has specialty areas and a family of companies that includes business valuation consultants, aligned mineral management, retirement plan advisors, and HMV wealth advisors. Before we get started, I just want to take care of a few housekeeping notes. First of all, our incredible presenters for today are going to be sharing some really great information with you. And so we do plan on sharing out a recording of today's meeting, but I personally would highly encourage you to grab a pen and some paper and have that close by, because you're going to want to jot down the great little nuggets of information that they're going to be sharing today, some very useful takeaways. We are going to keep the lines muted. If you don't see that you're muted right now, please go ahead and mute yourself, just to make sure we don't have a lot of unnecessary background noise. I do encourage you to submit your questions through the Q&A or through the chat, either one in your menu there. And we do plan on making time at the end of today's presentation to allow our presenters to address your questions. Okay, first, a quick disclosure here. The information that is being shared is for informational purposes only. This does not constitute any type of, investment advice. We all understand that everybody's individual situation is different, and so there are absolutely no guarantees. The information that's being shared today is from the American Retirement Association. All right, on to the good stuff. Our presenters for today. Let me take myself off camera for a second so you can see this great information. All right, Nicole Karamales is a client relationship specialist, and she holds a Series 65 license. She is a certified plan fiduciary advisor, CPFA, bringing a disciplined, client-focused approach to financial planning and retirement plan advisory services. So Nicole has a really interesting background, and I think you'll see this coming across in her presentation today. She has 13 years of experience teaching in Caddo schools. She was the 2016 Louisiana High School Teacher of the Year. And this really does shape her ability to guide clients with clarity, patience, and a strong commitment to their long-term success. She has a Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education and a Master of Education from NSU. Go Demons. Melissa Mitcham is one of our tax partners here at HMV, and she has tons of experience in the accounting field. She helps clients making those sound business decisions. She is a 1995 summa cum laude graduate of Tech, go Bulldogs, and she was initiated into Beta Alpha Psi. She has a CFP designation, and that is given to people who go through some rigorous certification requirements in the areas of financial planning, taxes, insurance, estate planning, and retirement planning. She is also on Tech's School of Accountancy Advisory Board. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to our presenters because they have some really great information to share with you today. So Nicole, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you all so much for being here today. As Tricia mentioned, today is the inaugural Women's Retirement Security Day. So, what does that mean? The American Retirement Association is always advocating for retirement savings and employee benefits and things like that. Well, they decided to establish a day to recognize some of the specific challenges women face in saving for retirement, and a day to help provide resources, to have educational opportunities like what we have right now, to help work around some of those challenges, and just to ensure that women are learning about financial literacy, learning how to save for retirement, gaining that confidence. So there's people all over the country doing exactly what we're doing right now. And so that's really exciting to know that like you're part of, such a bigger movement. Even further, there are people in DC today with the DC Fly-In Forum, people with the American Retirement Association, and now a subcommittee dedicated to women's retirement security as well, talking with congressmen and senators, advocating for the things that we all need to help us have a secure retirement. So that's why we're doing this today. Next, let's talk about like why HMV and HMV Wealth Advisors, felt led to do something like this. Melissa, can you speak to why HMV cares?
I think many people think that retirement planning is about reaching like a certain dollar amount, but in reality, it's just about creating choices and what financial security allows you to do more than just retire, but when you're ready to help your family if you choose, or support a cause that you care about, or just simply have peace of mind. And when we look at statistics, women are behind men in their retirement savings, and we just feel like it's a good cause. It's something that we want to address and help these women get more confident in that area.
Absolutely. One of my favorite roles that I have with HMV Wealth Advisors is actually working with employers to help set up their 401k plans, but even more than that, working with their employees, teaching them about the plan that they have and helping them learn, how to get on track with their own savings. And so when I learned about Women's Retirement Security Day, I just felt like it's a perfect fit, right? Like it's a favorite thing that I get to do is to help people learn how to save for retirement. And I know that sounds just so boring, but it's so important. And just for us to be able to designate some time to look into this and discuss it, I think is a powerful opportunity. Trisha, I just want to check in with you. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to that piece? And it's okay if you don't.
No, you're fine. I think sometimes, we get 401ks from our employer. Maybe we set up something when we're younger. We've been in the workforce for a while. Some of us not so young anymore. And I think we set it and we forget it. And so we get years down the road and it's like, oh, wait, what do I have? Is it really working for me? I don't know. It might have worked 20 years ago. So I think that the information y'all are sharing today is really relevant no matter what stage of your career that you're in.
Awesome. So Trisha mentioned earlier that you might want to have a pen and paper to jot some things down. And I just kind of want to set the stage for you today because are all in different stages of our retirement savings journey. And that's okay because the fundamentals always apply, right? So we're going to go through a lot of different topics and kind of throw a lot of vocabulary at you. What we're hoping that you can get out of today is a little bit of like prior knowledge, or at least, learn something that you didn't know before. Find the things that you can look into to learn more about to level up in your retirement savings. So we don't want you to be overwhelmed, but we do recognize that it's a lot of information and it might be overwhelming, but that's okay. We're going to break it down for you. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is kind of just the actual basics. Like before you can really dig deep into your retirement savings, you kind of have to make sure that you're set up and stable just with your kind of day-to-day cash flow. So we're going to talk about what you have to do first, and that's setting up an emergency fund. Um, and then the basics that come after that in terms of tackling debt and then saving for retirement. So, an emergency fund is step one. And Melissa is going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you need to keep in mind when setting up that emergency fund. But keep in mind, an emergency fund is not also your vacation fund, and it's not the emergency Christmas present fund. You need to define what an emergency is and establish that fund for emergencies. And so, Melissa, can you tell us a little bit more about setting up an emergency fund and things to think about?
Well, first of all, like you said earlier, being overwhelmed is probably one of the reasons why we don't start our emergency fund. But rather than letting the idea of it overwhelm you, just start by setting a small, like achievable milestone, like a $500 or $1,000. And this will give you the immediate breathing room that you need to have the cash to pay for like minor car repairs or maybe an urgent care visit without having to rely on your credit cards to pay for those type emergencies. Once you have a starter fund built, you got to figure out what your target is. Calculate how much you need to survive for 3 to 6 months. By looking at only what you have to have, your essential non-discretionary expenses. Then once you've amassed the target and you've amassed the amount that you need, then you need to make sure it's safe. So your emergency savings must be safe and it must be instantly accessible. So you don't want to put it in the stock market. You don't want to do anything risky with that. But instead, you want to do like a high yield savings account online to keep your money protected while earning some type of interest rate. The easiest way that I found in my life is to just set it and forget it. Set up a recurring transfer from your checking account to your savings account after every payday. And you won't believe how quickly it will accumulate. Just treat it like a regular fixed monthly bill. And then another thing that I teach my children and other clients is that when you do get maybe a tax refund or a bonus that you weren't expecting or some unexpected windfall, put it directly into the fund and that'll accelerate your progress even more. Or maybe you have a side hustle business, take that income and designate that for your emergency fund. But just don't let the idea of the 3 to 6 months, that amount, overwhelm you and keep you from starting. Start small.
Absolutely. And like Melissa said, everything adds up, so just whatever you can save to contribute to that emergency fund, tackle that first. So she mentioned that one of the benefits of having an emergency fund means that you've reduced your reliance on credit cards. We know credit cards are great to have. It's, great to be able to swipe that and not have to carry cash around. But I do see when I talk to employees of 401k plans that there is that over reliance on credit cards and kind of racking up that credit card bill to the point where you can't pay it off every month. Can really lead to trouble, right? Like we know that those have high interest rates on them. And so you end up kind of in this cycle of always just trying to get that paid down. So having that emergency fund reduces, your risk of becoming overly dependent on credit cards. But the next element here, so when you've got your emergency fund, you also want to start tackling your debts. And there can be some strategic ways to do this. The reason that we bring it up is a lot of savers find that they're having a hard time tackling debt and saving for retirement at the same time. And so they don't really know how to manage kind of these conflicting priorities. So think about the kind of debts that you have. You can have credit card debt, car loan, your own college debts. Some of you might be worried about, taking on loans for your child's education, things like that. So when you find that you have different stacks of debt lined up, Melissa is going to run us through like one easy way. I won't say, easy. The concept is easy, but it takes discipline, but one way to tackle debt so that you can kind of get it managed and under control.
First of all, just to say, debt is not inherently good or bad. The question is whether it's helping you build your future or preventing you from reaching it. Like a reasonable mortgage may be manageable in retirement, while a high interest credit card can significantly reduce your financial flexibility. So start with your high interest debt, your credit cards, payday loans, personal loans with high interest rates. Consider like your auto loans, for example. Um, then you're going to have to try to balance that debt repayment with retirement savings. So first, we're going to build our small emergency fund, which makes us less reliant on those credit cards. Contribute enough to your retirement plan. If you have access to a 401k plan through an employer, be sure that you're contributing enough to receive the full employer retirement match. So that may mean that you have to make the minimum payment on that credit card, and you be sure you do that because obviously it affects your credit rating. But you don't want to lose out on that employer match by not doing your part to ensure that you receive that. Aggressively pay down the high interest debt first. Look at all that you have, pay that. If the credit card is higher than your auto loan, then you pay the credit card off first. Once you start paying down the debt, then you can take that debt, that money that you were putting on that debt, and increase your retirement contributions. So you can see how paying it down also helps increase your savings for retirement.
Yeah, so sometimes they call like the debt payoff process kind of the snowball effect, I think is what they call it. You're you're paying the minimum on everything. Anything extra you have, you're putting towards that highest interest debt. Once that's paid off and under control, take what you were putting there onto the next highest one. Still paying minimums on everything. And like Melissa said, you'll get this, like dopamine push from like, yeah, I paid that one off. Got it. Put it to the next one. You build that momentum. And then once you have it all under control, you're not paying late fees, you're not getting, tons of like interest payments included in there. That's more that you can put towards your retirement savings. So Melissa pointed out, that was a beautiful transition. If you have an employer sponsored plan, you want to make sure that you're contributing to that and getting the match. So if none of this is uh, like known information to you, then you might have to take a step back and ask your employer or ask HR, do we have a 401k plan here? And also, is there a match that I need to know about? Or how do I become eligible to participate in the plan? A lot of times, this is information that you get on day one of being hired. And so you took it all in, it made sense in the moment, or maybe it didn't, and then you just kind of forget about it and you hope that everything's okay. But today's the day that we kind of sit with ourselves and ask ourselves hard questions and tell ourselves we can do hard things. Send that email, double check with your employer or your HR representative, and make sure that if there is a 401k plan, that you're participating in that plan and you know what you need to do. Melissa, if we don't have access to an employer-sponsored plan, a 401k or a 403b, can you run us through, and this is the part where like you might be taking some mad notes here, but can you run us through some other account type options that are available? And y'all, we'll try not to get super bogged down in this, but we want you to hear the words so that you know what to go and look into later. We want you to be aware of what's available for you. So options for people who don't have an employer-sponsored 401k.
Well, number one is a traditional IRA account. Many of you may have heard of that. It's been one of the oldest ones that have been around forever. Your contributions could be tax deductible depending on your level of income, and whether or not your spouse is covered or whether you're covered by a 401k plan. Your investments grow tax deferred, which is a huge advantage in helping you accumulate that retirement savings. There's also the Roth IRA, which those contributions are made with after-tax dollars. But when you withdraw the money from the Roth IRA, it's tax-free. So it's particularly attractive for younger workers or those who expect to be in a higher tax bracket later. The spousal IRA. So many people don't realize that a spouse who isn't working outside the home may still be able to contribute to an IRA if the other spouse has enough earned income. So this is especially helpful for stay-at-home parents, caregivers, or individuals that are taking time away from the workforce. And then, of course, there's women out there who own their own businesses, or you work as an independent contractor. You have options that include like a SEP IRA, a simple IRA, or a solo 401k if you're an owner-only business. These plans often allow significantly higher contribution limits than the traditional IRA, so that makes them more powerful tools for accelerating that retirement savings. Also, health savings accounts. These are people that are enrolled in a high deductible health plan. You can use the HSA as a way to help prepare yourself for those retirement healthcare expenses. The contributions to the health savings account are deductible. They grow tax deferred, and you get tax-free withdrawals if you have a qualified medical expense. So you can also view it as a supplement to your retirement savings. And then if you can't do any of these other options, maybe you don't have a spouse that works and you don't work outside the home, there's also taxable investment accounts, which don't have contribution limits. They're more flexible in getting the funds and having access to the funds, and you still have that opportunity for long-term growth.
Perfect. So at this point, I'm going to ask Trisha to pull up the slide on some of the things that can get in the way of us saving for retirement. Because I just blasted right past that at the beginning in the intro and we didn't even talk about it. So this is a good time to do it because, now that you kind of know where you can put some retirement savings, we need to talk about some of the things that can decrease our savings rate. Because when you know about these things, like knowledge is power, right? If you know that these issues exist, then you can help plan for them. It doesn't mean that they won't happen. Life happens. We all know that. But just being aware that these can be some things that pop up throughout your, retirement savings journey, you can plan for them. So if you see on your screen here, I'm just going to kind of summarize for you along the way, but some of our kind of statistical hindrances to higher savings amounts, we've got the gender pay gap, which leads to lower savings rate. Statistically, women with children earn less over their career than women without children. That can be related to the types of positions that we can apply for, the types of flexibility that we need along the way. There can be lots of things that lead to that. Women will often leave the workforce early to care for elderly relatives, or even spend time outside of the workforce to care for children. And if you think about it, I mean, this is one of those just family discussion decisions, right? And this could be the woman in the home or the man in the home. This could go either way, but being aware that this might be something that your family needs to plan for already puts you ahead of the mark, right? So to continue, a high percentage of women lack access to employer-based plans. That's why we mentioned, if you do have an employer-sponsored retirement plan, yes, you want to make sure you're at least, taking advantage of that. It's the easiest way for you to save for retirement. But if you don't have access to that, Melissa ran you through the different kinds of accounts that you can look into to see if that would be appropriate for you. Continuing on, over half of women surveyed in this particular survey said that they don't have enough to save. And that takes us back to what we talked about first, right? Kind of looking at that budget, squirreling away what you can for that emergency fund and getting yourself in a situation where, an emergency doesn't derail you or put you in a panic. You've got a buffer there to help account for that. And then the last one, and this one's really important too, we're not just, woman does not just mean one thing, right? When you break that down among women, the savings gap and access to employer-sponsored plans increases when we break it down by race and ethnicity. So we've got this big, hurdle here, but being aware of some of these hurdles, like I said, doesn't eliminate them. But if we can plan for it, then we can overcome it, right? So that was a nice little visual break, I think, to help us move to the next thing. And that is setting some goals. So we've talked about the emergency fund. We've talked about, how to save for retirement. But what does that mean to save for retirement? Melissa mentioned at the beginning that a lot of people think that, you're just saving a bunch and the end, right? Like, I don't know. What do you do with that, right? What do you need to do with that? And so setting some goals, assessing our progress towards the goals is kind of the next little piece for us to talk about. I feel like Melissa might have mentioned, oh yeah, it was the goals for the emergency savings, right? So, Melissa, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about in terms of setting goals for saving for retirement or
Yeah,
anything like that?
yeah, I think to set a goal, you've got to establish first how much do you need to retire? So, in order to answer that question, you need to know what your retirement looks like. And then you need to estimate your future spending. Think about housing, healthcare, transportation, travel, taxes, because some expenses will decrease in retirement while others, like healthcare, will often increase. So take inventory of where you are today. Like review your retirement account balances, your savings, your investments, your pension, Social Security, debt, and then emergency savings. And then you'll have to identify the gap. So where are you today versus where you want to be? Ask how much do you need to save annually? How many years you have until retirement? Are you on track? What adjustments can you make? So you might just want to start with a simple, easy goal. Maybe increase your 401k contribution by 2% this year. Maximize your IRA contribution. Maybe you want to pay your credit card off within 12 months or build your 6-month emergency fund. Just you've got to start setting a goal and doing some of these steps that we talked about earlier in order to accomplish those. And look at it annually, at least annually, to make sure you're still on track. Because things happen. Life changes, marriage, divorce, career change, children, caregiving responsibilities. Maybe you inherit a lot of money. That would be a good one. Health issues. So just, I encourage you to review it at least annually, just to be sure that all these life changes haven't somehow affected what your goal is.
Absolutely. And so, I challenge you now to put a date in your calendar on your phone, check back in with my retirement savings. Um, at this point, it might be checking back in a year. Did I bump up my savings by 1%? Or did I stick to my savings goal? If you did, excellent. What changes do you need to make? If you didn't, that's reality also. Sometimes, maybe that emergency fund got low and you couldn't save as much because you were replenishing or whatever. Just check back in and reassess. There is no shame in not knowing everything. So, one of the things that I hear most from employees when I work with them is that they feel bad that they don't know about their 401k plan or they don't know about these outside accounts that they can open. There is nothing to feel bad about and that not being your specialty. Your specialty is in something different, right? Something that I don't know about. That's totally normal. And there are resources available to you that you can tap into. And we're going to share more of those later, some of the things that we like to look at. But at kind of base level, if your employer has a 401k, there likely is a website you can log into, like to check your balance. They're going to have some financial education resources, more than likely. A little survey you can take to kind of see where you are in your financial prowess, and then some resources that it'll provide to help you learn more how to level up your understanding. If you're opening an account just outside of work, you're opening up like a brokerage investment account, like Melissa mentioned, they are going to have a little series of questions for you to answer to kind of gauge where you're at in your investment knowledge and just answer those kind of truthfully, and use the resources that are available to you to learn more about it there. You don't have to feel bad about not understanding, but you should challenge yourself and push yourself um, to learn a little bit more, a little bit more at a time. There was something else that Melissa said that I wanted to speak to, but it'll come back to me in a little bit. At this point, Trisha, should we kind of talk about planning through different life stages, or do we have Q&As kind of lining up that we need to cut our time a little shorter to give more time to the Q&A? What do you think? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, yes, the old mute got me. I do have a couple of Q&As, but I do think we have time for you to address the life stages, and then we'll jump into Q&A.
Awesome. Okay. So planning through different life stages. I mentioned at the beginning, we're kind of running you through some of the fundamentals that always hold true. But we do recognize that there are some other questions that come up based on like what phase of saving that you're in. So Melissa, in the accumulation phase, just when you're working and you're saving, do you have any kind of thoughts or pointers that you'd like to put out there, things to think about
Well,
for
from a
planning?
female perspective, I mean, you look at statistics, we typically live longer than the men. If you're at a Social Security age and you're about to retire, say at 65, you probably need to look at living another 20 years. And will the money that you put back last that 20 to 25 years? And it's just difficult to say. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know how long we're going to live. So you just have to look at what you've accumulated, look at insurance, Social Security benefits, all the things you have access to, and just see how long will your income last. That's more later, I guess, into your retirement journey. The other thing I think as a female, we tend to not put ourselves first. We tend to put the children first, our spouses first, our family members. Considering the fact that you need to be around a lot longer to take care of all these people, you're going to need that money more than they. So, for example, the college education, they can always borrow the money to go to school. You can't borrow money for your retirement. So just think about that. Don't put yourself last. You're just as important as all those other goals, and you're going to need to be around to take care of these people.
Absolutely.
And as far as outliving your retirement, that scares everyone. But if you have a plan, planning is good, worry is bad. If we have a plan, you won't worry so much about the rest. So the biggest step would just to have a plan, follow the plan, and monitor annually.
Yes. And when you're very far out from retirement, I feel like it's hard to know, like, how much am I going to need in retirement? Like, what bills will I have and what does that look like? that picture does get a little clearer. Again, no crystal ball. It's not perfect, but it gets clearer as you get closer to retirement. The typical like recommendation is that you're trying to save 10 to 15% of your pay for retirement. So, maybe day one of working, you can't start at 10 to 15%. You don't want to, be eating beanie weenies, every night just to cover your retirement savings. But, pick a percentage, maybe like the employer match, and then just make it a goal, like Melissa said earlier, to bump up your savings percentage each year. So, that's something to help you, when you don't know what to do, but you need some kind of goal just to put on paper and work towards. That can be where you start. For transitional periods, um, Melissa, like getting raises throughout your career or changes in health, that's a transitional period that can happen while we're working. What are your thoughts on any of that?
Well, if you've covered all your other expenses, you're maxing out your retirement and you do get an increase in pay, maybe this would be a good time for you to take that increase and put more into that retirement account. As far as, the things that happen, the life things that happen, you'll just have to, again, revisit the plan, put those new life-changing factors in that plan, and just see where your gap is. It's just something that's always going to evolve, and you just have to be able to pivot. But like I said, the initial step is to have the plan. And then as these life-changing events occur, you'll have to adjust it. I mean, none of us are perfect and things are going to happen. So just be sure you have a plan and that you're monitoring it. And when you have the opportunity, like when that raise comes, to put more in the stock market, maybe through an investment account or maybe through your retirement account, if you're able to, you will be surprised how quickly that will accumulate because of compounding and the fact that you're consistently saving. You'll see a huge difference.
Absolutely. My thought is, and something that I hear a lot, be cautious of assuming that you can work until you die. I hear that from so many people, that they're gonna have to carry me out of here. I'm gonna work till I die. And that's great if that's your goal. If that's what makes you happy, that's wonderful. But again, we don't have that crystal ball. And so you do want to make sure that you have a plan in place in case you do have to retire sooner than you thought. As you're kind of working towards this accumulation phase and transitional periods, I started reading this really great book called Your Retirement Sketchbook, and they have you actually sketch out what you would like your retirement to look like. That has been such a powerful way to kind of change my thinking about retirement is, oh, actually seeing myself in retirement. Oh, I'm going to want to be able to fund this activity and these trips and these kinds of things. So I think that sketching that out, again, writing down goals, sketching out goals, if you write it, if you put it down on paper, you're more likely to achieve it. So I think that those are some good things to think about. As you're approaching retirement, one big reminder that I like to send out to people is if you're in the position to save more and you're between certain age ranges, it kind of changes from year to year, but there's something called catch-up contributions that you can possibly qualify for. So if you are able to max out those retirement accounts, look into those catch-up contributions. If you have extra that you can throw in right there towards your winding down phase, that could be really helpful. Melissa, what about in retirement? You have some thoughts on spendings.
I would spend it all. I again, I think a lot of people hesitate to spend their retirement because they're scared they're going to run out of money. But again, if you have that plan in place and you know that you're working the plan. So again, that's say the 4% rule is 4% of your retirement balance is what you're spending. And you know that your money, whatever that sum of money is going to last 20 years. Then anything over and above that, you can use for travel or whatever, additional things you've come up with that you would like to accomplish during your retirement. After you need to be probably not as invested aggressively as in retirement as you were maybe 20 years prior. So you want to be sure that your investments are still earning money and compounding, but you don't want to lose that money. So that's when we usually talk about diversification and not putting all your eggs in one basket. That again is something that as you're in retirement, you're just going to make sure that you're in a conservative investment, still making a decent return, but you don't want it to be risky. I'm trying to think of anything else that we are usually have time. I mean, it's a fun time. If you want to know what I tell my children is, you're lucky you're not going to have to pay for my retirement home because I'm going to spend everything, but I'm going to take care of myself. It's just I'm not going to leave them anything. So you can't. I mean, if they get something that's great, and I know that's honorable, and parents want to leave their children things, but in this day and age with healthcare costs rising, you just have to be sure that you can at least take care of yourself, and hopefully your children won't have to bear that burden.
Yes. Making sure that you can take care of yourself, that you have the funding to take care of yourself is an inheritance to your kids, right? Like that is them not having to maybe take time off work to care for you because, paying for other care or nurses, might be outside of the budget. And again, these are all honorable things. These are family conversations, but just being aware of these topics, these are levers that you can control. You can't control like the things that life throws at you, but you can control savings and budgeting and planning, right? And that's what we want to empower you to do. It's not a one size fits all picture, but hopefully today you've gotten some pieces to help you look forward and find more information about. And we didn't even get into how to, like, once you're saving in your retirement account, like, how do you invest it? Like, we didn't even make it into that part, but I will kind of give you just like the quick rundown of that. And wherever you're investing, they're going to have a little like pop up, I button next to how to invest. And it's going to run you through some educational pieces to make sure that the risk you're taking is appropriate for you. And that's something worth taking your time and looking at. Melissa mentioned you want diversification. She mentioned, when you're younger, there's room for risk, but when you're in retirement, it's time to make that a little more secure and less risky. So just like maybe our next webinar can go a little deeper, into that part. We just kind of ran out of time to go into that super deep today. But
I do like to mention that I feel like women in general are less risky than men. Men tend to be more confident in investing money. So if you're a young woman and you've got 20 to 30 years, don't be afraid to be a little more aggressive, because the reason that there is a gap right now is because we are more conservative and less risky by nature. So
might be why we live longer too.
Yeah, that would be why we live longer too. But that would help to close the gap, is, realizing where we are in our retirement journey and knowing that you have time to recuperate from a national disaster or anything that might happen. But like I said, the other things that Nicole said we weren't able to touch on today, diversification does help with that. So just keep that in mind, that you can afford to be a little more aggressive earlier in life, and that will help close that gap.
Awesome. Trisha, are we ready kind of for our takeaways and then to transition into the Q&A?
We are. I think
Awesome.
y'all covered the takeaways, but happy to
Yes.
jump back just to make sure if you would like.
Now, I mean, basically, you've got your goals, you've established your goals, write them down, put dates in your calendar to check back in on those retirement savings goals. And from today's conversation and from future things that you learn, figure out, what you don't know and what you do need to know more about so that you can feel that confidence in your retirement savings and you can seek out other resources. And we do have some resources listed for you. Melissa had mentioned that is it Community Foundation has financial literacy resources and things like that. Trisha, if you are able to look at the resource or flip to the resources page, is that a good time to do that? Here we go. Yeah, United Way. Sorry. Monroe has the Financial Health Center. Shreveport has the financial security team. These are free financial health resources. Your local library system has tons of resources. Wiserwomen.org is a whole nonprofit dedicated to women's retirement security. They have articles and podcasts and just information on all things retirement for women. The Department of Labor even has a website specifically for women's retirement savings. I mentioned the book, Your Retirement Sketchbook. It's listed there for you as well. Both of our websites, hmvcpa.com and hmvwealth.com, are good resources. So, don't be shy. When you go to the library, don't be shy. Those librarians are there to help you curate resources. So ask if your 401k plan has an advisor, they're a great resource as well. So ask your employer, hey, does our plan have an advisor? I'd love to set up a meeting with them. Knowledge is power. So just whatever you can learn is going to help you.
Awesome. So lots of wonderful information so far. Just I know we're just scratching the surface, but it's still such helpful information. One other question that we received earlier, if I've got my retirement out there, I've got some investments, I have my 401k, but I'm watching the news, right? And the stock market's up and it's down and then it's and it's just so much like what do I do with my investments when I'm watching the news and I'm hearing, all about the market? What do I do?
My answer to that is to not pay attention to the news. And you don't want to react and change your investment lineup just based on the news. Again, like we could have a whole other webinar just for this, but the market's going to do what the market does. It goes down, it goes up. It's risk and reward. Like Melissa said, the real point to keep in mind is what's your own risk tolerance. And there are questionnaires that you can take, especially like from these nonprofit organizations that we've mentioned, to help you assess how risky you're willing to be. That's what you go by is how much risk do you need to take, right? If you're younger, you can probably afford to take more risk. But if you're nearing retirement and your balance is looking good and you're getting excited about, retiring and paying yourself in retirement, you don't need to be taking a ton of risk. You don't need it. You've already covered your bases, you've saved. So pay attention to your risk tolerance. That's, and Google that. If that phrase is not meaning anything just yet, look into that a little bit more. Go by that. Don't go by the news. The world is always crazy and the markets don't always respond in the way that you think that they would based on whatever news is happening in the world. So, Melissa, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you really need to remember this, that most people make decisions based on emotion and not logic. So when they're buying and selling in the stock market, those are emotional decisions. So you definitely don't need to, I don't say ignore it, but you don't need to make investment decisions based on what you saw in the news. There was another thought I had, but it escapes me. Oh, I was a client story. I had a client who this was a really bad day in the stock market, and he comes into our conference room and he said, I called him and told him to sell everything. And he really did.
Oh,
When
no.
you do that, you have no chance of recouping your losses. He lost whatever he lost, 50% of his account. So based on an emotional decision. So you just really don't, it's not smart. Again, it's having a plan, making sure you're working your plan, look at it annually, don't watch the news and make decisions on emotion.
Absolutely. And find, some like, NPR type videos of like how the stock market works. Find a little video on how mutual funds work. Find these quippy, good, neutral, not trying to sell you a product type, video that'll explain how these things work. And that will help you feel better about what it is that the stock market is doing. And the stock market is doing its thing. It's going up and it's going down. But that will help you understand what this risk means and how you fit into that risk, like what's appropriate for you. Any other questions for us?
No other questions right now in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll give it just another second here. I do know one question that I had gotten was, is this information going to be available afterward? And we do plan to share out the recording. So definitely keep an eye on our website as well as our social media where you probably saw the link to register here. So we will be sharing this information out afterward. If no other questions, Melissa, Nicole, do you want to wrap us up here?
Well, Melissa, yeah, do you have any final words to the
Well,
folks?
usually the biggest obstacle is not your income, it's our behavior.
Mm,
So, waiting for the perfect time, fear of investing, putting everybody else's needs first, not knowing where to start, believing it's too late. I mean, these are reasons why people
mhm.
don't get started. Just don't let that happen. Like I said, start small. Doesn't have to be massive, just a little bit at a time. And just get started, just starting right now. It's kind of like exercise. You just got to get started. Sometimes
I was
just
gonna,
walking out the door is the hardest thing. Once I'm out there
yes,
and walking, I'm doing great.
that truly is it. And having, what might be a very hard conversation with yourself, like you're having to be honest with yourself about what you can control and what you can't control. And once you identify what you can control, then you need to, and that's easier said than done. Again, like the steps are simple, but the dedication to it, the discipline can be challenging. It's our behavior, like Melissa said, that's the hardest part. She's the exercise example, but one of the folks that I work with a lot, thanks for the heart. One of the folks that we work with a lot says, the best time to plant a tree was yesterday or 100 years ago or whatever, but the second best time is today. And so, you are empowered to assess your situation, figure out where you are, and go from there. Make yourself some goals. You deserve it. It's important. Um, you deserve that security.
Absolutely.
And we do want, your feedback. Feel free to hit us up on our websites. You can type in the little inquiry page and give us feedback on this. If you'd like for us to do this again next year, we'd love to do that.
Well, just remember, retirement security isn't reserved for people with high incomes. It's built by people who make thoughtful, consistent decisions over time. And you, as a woman, you deserve the confidence that comes with having a plan. So whether you're just getting started or you're nearing retirement, the best time to strengthen your future is today.
Perfectly spoken. You're muted.
There I go again. See, I'm so busy unmuting y'all, I forget to unmute myself. Thank you all so much for joining us. Appreciate the feedback. People are already asking for y'all to do it again next year. So yay.
Yay!
All right. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.